welcome this morning. My name's Liz Sharp. For those who don't know me, I'm an Ed and I'm Deputy Chair. And apologies from Colin. Unfortunately, he's got some long-standing commitments today, so he actually is unable to attend. But his thoughts are with us, so I caught up with him yesterday. So thank you for that. Just rules of engagement, please. If everyone could stay on mute unless you're talking, so we don't get a high level of feedback. The nurse in me says, please, plenty of fluids, keep drinking. If you need a break, please take a break and go and cool down if you absolutely need to. So thank you very much for that. Peter, do we have any apologies?
Yeah, we have apologies in advance from Martin, Mark and Leanne.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And I understand I have two wing men today who are both Peters. So I've got Peter Lee and Peter Shaw, who is taking the lead for the Council of Governors. And I know Andrew is there in the background behind the camera. So, you know, thanks for that. Can I just ask for your patience in terms of when you put your hands up? There are a huge number of you on the screen. I will try to get you in order if I possibly can, but we will see how that goes. Just bear with me. So thank you very much. Please, can anyone let me know if there are any new declarations of interest? Seeing lots of no's, so can we take that no new declarations of interest? And minutes from the previous meeting. Are there any amendments, matters arising?
Minutes.
Peter.
Oh.
Peter
Shaw.
Yeah.
You're mute if you're talking, Peter.
Yes, sorry. It's a matter arising. So if you want to take the minutes as accurate before you let me in, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So the minutes accurate. Just one comment from myself. Andrew Latham is down as Andrew Cuthbert in one of the opening areas. That's all. Just a minor amendment, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Richard?
Sorry, just confirming the change, Liz. I was just putting a thumb up. My hand went up instead of a thumb. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, matters arising. Peter, over to you.
Yeah, 5925, which was the review of the effectiveness of the previous meeting. Governors noted while performance and assurance papers were comprehensive, there will be value in formally presenting the overarching performance review paper. It was agreed that this would be considered. So my question is, have you considered it and what was your conclusion?
Okay. Peter, you happy to take that?
Yeah, no, so the honest answer is no, missed that, Peter, apologies. But if you're referring to, so in the pack we have the BAF and the IQR, and then we have the three pillar board reports, and then we have the cover paper that gives that kind of board overview. Is that, if that's what you're referring to, Peter? Yeah. So I mean, certainly subject to you, Liz, we can take that first just to give that kind of overview before we get into each of the three pillars. That wouldn't be a problem at all, I don't think.
That would be great. Yes, thanks, Peter. And Peter, if you can just hold that until we get to performance review,
yep,
that would be
do.
helpful.
Yep.
Yeah. Any other matters arising? Anybody?
No, just to confirm then, as per the action log, there are three actions and proposing to close all three as stated. One of the actions relates to the estates update that's in the pack under the action log item, so item 058, and then included within that is the estate strategy. That's for the council's information, so unless there's any questions on that, it's there as per the action from the last meeting.
Thanks, Peter. And just the estates paper is a considerable size with a huge amount of detail in there. I understand that is an action. If there are any questions, please could you let me know around that? But it was the request that you have it in full detail.
No hands, no.
No, happy to move on then. Okay, let's go straight forward then to performance review. And just to be clear in terms, we have shared the full IQR with you all, and you do have the detail and the data around that. And I think we'll move to performance review and have an update from Jen. Jen, are you there?
Yes, I am indeed. I'm sorry, I'm
Brilliant.
struggling
Are you happy
slightly
to go forward?
I am. I haven't got any of the papers. Sorry, Pete and Richard, I've been messaging you, but I'm not sure I'm on the distribution. So I'm just trying to access those.
Okay, I'll send you those to you now, Jen.
And Jen, really, you're down as CEO as a verbal update around performance and anything that you would like to bring to the Council of Governors. There isn't a paper written or there for you.
Oh, good. Okay, because that's what was making me slightly panic, because I was expecting to attend to give a verbal update. So when you called me in to speak to a paper that I haven't got, I was feeling slightly nervous. Okay, so yes, no, I am expecting to give an update. So yeah, I think performance obviously will be one of the things that we touch on, but I was going to just give a kind of more general overview of where we are, and then happy to take any sort of questions that arise. So there probably, just to note a few important people changes that have happened that we also noted at board. So thanking Simon Weldon for the great foundation that he's built for the organisation, acknowledging Margaret Diel, I can't say Margaret's other name, Diel has moved on into her highly valued retirement, and David Rees, who's is our Chief Strategy Officer, has moved to secondment at Dartford and Gravesham. So just wanted to note for the record that obviously Jo Turner is now our interim chief nurse, and Richard Quirk has stepped up to take on the strategy portfolio alongside being chief medical officer. So we're very grateful and welcoming to Jo and Richard in his extended role. I think some good news from a performance perspective. We continue to be rated in National Oversight Framework Segment 2, which reflects the kind of strong performance that we've delivered through the previous year. And we have also had excellent news in the recognition from the CQC of the high quality of our services across both integrated care, our contact centre operation, and also our urgent and emergency care, which is our field operations area. So really, really great to see our services upgraded to overall. So I think that really reflects the hard work that's been done over a number of years to improve the quality of our services. Clearly some areas for learning around that, as there are still areas for improvement around our performance, but we are very happy with that position. I think what you'll see from the performance reports, and that I would certainly acknowledge, is that it's been quite a challenging start to the year. So we're at the moment in a period of extremely high pressure due to the heat wave, but actually this isn't the first period of high pressure. We also had a sort of very hot bank holiday weekend, and demand has been really high in the first 2 to 3 months of the year. So that's put a lot of pressure on our services, and people are working really hard to address that. So we are not as far ahead of the game in the first part of the year performance-wise as we would wish, but we have some robust plans in place to improve our resilience through the summer and into the winter, and then to continue to deliver the productivity that we need to make good on in order to maintain that strong performance position. And on the positive side, we are remaining kind of financially in a good place. So we're keeping control of our money, which is so important. You know, we are a resource limited NHS, we're a resource limited organisation, and it's our duty and responsibility to make best use of those resources. So we're staying on top of that for the moment, and of course the challenge will be continuing to maintain use of resources while delivering the responsiveness and quality that our patients deserve. So we're very much thinking that through and very much aligning that to our strategy to increase the level of virtual care and hear and treat that we provide, as well as working innovatively through the group to deliver further value. So on the financial side, I think it was already acknowledged in the preamble to the meeting. We were pleased to sign off the annual report and the year-end accounts, which had a very strong audit rating. So again, I think that's a compliment to all involved for putting us on a really robust financial footing and giving us that assurance that we're managing things as we should. So well done to the finance team and the broader team. But yeah, more to do. So we're continuing to work, as I said, in the group model to focus, particularly you may have heard that we're moving forward with the business case and the procurement process for a potential shared CAD and EPCR. That's the computer aided dispatch and electronic patient record systems that we use, looking to bring a common platform into place across CCAM and SCAS, which would be a huge step forward in terms of building a foundation for our clinical model and our clinical collaboration. And that's a really, really important piece of work that's ongoing at the moment, and we've moved forward to towards market engagement and the full business case for that. So that's good news, as well as there being a range of other areas that we're collaborating with SCAS on, including the clinical model, reviewing some of our specialist and advanced practice services, and working together on some smaller supporting services like our payroll and our workforce management. So that's really, really positive. I wanted to mention the progress of the volunteering strategy, which is a very important piece of work, close to my heart. I think the contributions the volunteers can make both to our patients but also in our broader communities are really important for the year coming. The volunteer strategy is moving forward. We've put in place now the structure that aligns to our ICSs and divisions and supports the expansion of volunteering that we're aiming for, and we're very much aligning that to our ambitions to continue to improve our cardiac arrest outcomes. I'd like to highlight that we continue to have amongst the best cardiac outcomes of any ambulance service, but there are still inequalities within that, and so we've got more to do to really focus not just our volunteering strategy but our broader clinical pathway improvement around continuing to improve the pathways our patients experience, all patients, and also continuing to address inequalities in the outcomes of those pathways. So that's a really exciting piece of work that is ongoing at the moment, and I think an update will come back through board in due course. I think that's probably most of what I wanted to cover to celebrate, continuing to kind of reach out across the organisation and promote all the different charitable work that we're doing, and also to collaborate and to align that with SCAS. So there's been some sort of charity and engagement activity that we've done across the two trusts, and I guess we continue to focus on delivering over the summer and into the winter as we welcome Colin, and also look forward to Simon Ashton taking on his group chief executive role in probably the kind of autumn time. So I think that was all I had to cover. Very happy to have a conversation if there's time about any of those things or any other.
Thanks, Jen, and I'm sure that you're going to have lots of questions on your report and generally as well, because I know there was a governor pre-meet as well that Peter Shaw led. So open to all of you. Any questions for Jen, please?
I put my hand up, Liz. Sorry,
Andrew,
can't see it.
Okay, Andrew.
Thanks, Jen, for your report. I wanted to raise with you some concerns that have been raised with me by a number of constituents in respect to the movement to virtual care hubs. There only being 2 of them rather than whatever we've got now, 10 or something. I wanted to ask you some specific questions, if I may, in respect to that. Have the trust evaluated in the area of clinicians having to not be in, for example, the Ashford hub, which I think has been one of the most successful from the resume that we saw, and now having to travel to Medway? Have you taken some thinking around what that's going to do to people's sort of welfare in terms of travel times, in terms of the length of shifts that they're going to be serving? You know, a 12-hour shift, and then perhaps an hour and a half each way to get there, and then do that 4 days on the jump. I wonder what consideration you've been given to that. I've got a number of questions, so maybe we could start with that one.
Andrew, can I just, Jed, before you come in, because I think also under the NED summary reports, I certainly know it's in my quality report, it's in Suzanne's finance report around performance and for people as well. So we may well answer some of those questions a bit more comprehensively. So Jen, if you want to give a brief response, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, Liz, I think in order to kind of ensure that we're clear and that we don't sort of duplicate or get confused around the questions, it might be worth me giving a brief update of what is actually proposed around virtual care, because for whatever reason, some misconceptions seem to have arisen, as Andrew has helpfully demonstrated, because there is no proposal for people from Ashford to drive for 4 12-hour shifts in a different hub. So what's actually proposed is we've got a lot of evidence and rationale for moving to a more centralised model of pre-dispatch virtual care, by which I mean the validation of category 3 and 4 calls primarily in order to ensure the proper appropriate response to patients' right care first time. So there's lots of national guidance and strategy on that, recommending a system-based model. And there's also actually a lot of evidence locally that for that element of work, the centralised model, because we're currently running like a sort of hybrid where we've got some going on centrally and some in the 10 UCNHs, the centralised model is considerably more productive and equally as effective in terms of its clinical outcomes as the distributed model. So the decision's been made to move the pre-dispatch virtual care to a more centralised ICS-based model. So that's one centre for Kent and Medway and one for Surrey and Sussex in our main locations of Medway and Crawley. For the actual clinicians involved, there's a sort of 2 parts to this. One is that we will be looking to recruit to both Medway and Crawley in a even more effective and future-focused manner than we do at the moment. So clearly we recruit to those teams, but I think there's more that we can do to really set up value and demonstrate the kind of skills those roles need to have, the career pathway for people in those roles, and the training and development support that we can offer to them. There's also an element where clinicians performing pre-dispatch virtual care in the distributed model will have the opportunity to move into the centralised model. So noting that that involves 2 main cohorts at the moment. One is what we call PACS clinicians, who are on hybrid roles. So they generally work either 25 or 50% of their hours, sometimes less actually, on PACS, which is the pre-dispatch virtual care, and the rest of their hours on road shifts. And the idea is that they would be invited to move those PACS hours, which, as I say, is, you know, it might be 1 shift a week, it might be 2 shifts a week, into being part of the centralised model, but with a agile working arrangement, which is already in place in both Medway and Crawley, enabling people to work like up to 50-50 centralised and working from home under the leadership and governance of the centralised model. So for those clinicians, what we're actually talking about is essentially would probably be working perhaps 1 to 2 at the absolute most shifts centrally per fortnight, as it were. And of course, the travel implications vary quite considerably depending on where you live and exactly where you would be travelling to. So we have thought that through, but obviously we are in the process of doing a people impact assessment, which will sort of pick up that variable impact and understand it. Clearly, travel expenses are always subject to policy, and there's not a proposal to move people's base locations. For the advanced paramedic practitioners, who are the other main group affected, APPs do about 20% of their contract on pre-dispatch virtual care, which would be the element that they would be invited to undertake in the centralised hub, either Medway or Crawley, and therefore it would be one shift a fortnight essentially, if they were to take up the offer of the agile working, which they would be, very much invited to do if that worked for them, depending again on where they live. And the I guess the bit about the shifts is we don't generally encourage. There are some, but I wouldn't encourage a 12-hour shift pattern for virtual care because of the implications for kind of screen-based working. So I think that wouldn't be something that we would be looking to kind of embed as the kind of core and only way of working within this. In fact, we do actually have a whole load of different variable shift patterns in both in the centralised services as they currently stand and in the UCNHs. So I think it may be, Andrew, that understandably people, it is change creates anxiety and uncertainty. And I think there's more that we need to do to communicate properly the rationale for the change, the benefits of it for both patients and for the workforce in terms of the training, career pathway, supervision and governance that we can offer. But also just to be clearer, because I think when people hear things for the first time, maybe we haven't explained it as clear as we could have done. There's some misconceptions arisen about what is actually being proposed. So I'm aware and recognise the anxieties that people have expressed. I myself have attended a whole range of staff forums in the last week or two and had this very conversation. So I recognise the anxiety and the change and the need not to lose the learning and the good things about the hubs as they stand. We probably won't be continuing to have a model of so many hubs because that's not necessarily an effective use of resources. But for shared decision making, for post-dispatch care, for the broader kind of support of the dispatch desks through advanced practitioners and other kind of multidisciplinary input, we're very much in a conversation about what that will look like moving forward. How do we evolve from what we have to something that keeps the best bits and is even more effective in sustainability terms? So, some really fruitful discussions going on about that, and an opportunity, I think, to work with leads within the hubs in the new divisional model with the area clinical leads to work out, what the best configuration of divisionally based post-dispatch shared decision-making hubs are, where colleagues will still be working for that element. I hope that made sense, Andrew. It's a really long answer, but I thought it was worth explaining.
No, that's very helpful, Jen, but it sort of highlights perhaps a need for the trust sometimes to think a little bit more about how to communicate this before we just launch a project of this magnitude that can cause significant concerns and doubts, and it sort of undermines sometimes the sort of carefully thought through leadership if it then isn't communicated effectively. If you don't mind, we did discuss this briefly at the pre-meet, so it's not just me, but others will chip in a second. One of the things that concerns is that you reported at the board meeting that out of 100 virtual care vacancies, we had, I think, 38 applicants, not 38 people who were actually appointed. So some of those may be considered not to be suitable, and out of those, what therefore perhaps joining the dots wrongly, but what concerns me is if we've got a number of people who are saying, do you know what, this is all too difficult, actually I'll just go back on the road all the time, and we're struggling to recruit anyway, that puts more pressure on the service because there are more C3 and C4 calls to manage, which means that there are less trucks out on the road to deal with C2, which means that our slightly below par or below target C2 mean, which has a £5 million bounty at the end of it, is under pressure, which could become this vicious circle of not actually being able to ever step out of the C2 mean shortfall. And we may end up with a position where the £5 million, which is we're totally reliant on to get to our balanced financial position at the end of the year. So that's the sort of theme of concern, and one action causing a number of knock-on effects, which I'm sure you're all over, but it just, I think, was worth making that point.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's a risk, Andrew. Just to clarify, the 100 posts that were advertised for which we had 30-something applicants, I think sort of something less than 30 people have been appointed, were for posts to work in the current UCNHs. So any conception that people are flocking to work in UCNHs and are, then
no, I realise
not wanting to work centrally is slightly not quite right. I mean, you are right. We are struggling to recruit to virtual care as a whole.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that. I was, I was quite shocked that it wasn't actually as attractive to people as the trust had obviously hoped for.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that actually, Andrew, is one of the big pieces that we need to do better with, because what I want to really dispel is a impression that's sometimes spoken of that virtual care is non-patient facing care. It's absolutely core clinical care, and it is as important as physical care, and critical to our strategy, and we need to value it as such and provide the appropriate training, skills, support, and indeed expectations of our clinicians to provide that care to a high quality and effectively and productively. So I totally agree with all you've said, and that knock-on effect could happen, and it's what we're working hard to try and mitigate.
Great. I'll shut up now, Jen. You'll be pleased.
Thanks, Andrew.
And I'll leave it to others to.
Yeah, this is an NHS England drive this isn't just CCAM. This is every ambulance service is having to increase their level of virtual care at a rapid pace. So I think that needs to be clear. I think we also have to understand that paramedics currently are not trained in virtual care. So it is an alien environment that we are asking our paramedics and our clinical teams to move into, whereas other clinical professions, if we talk about nursing, etc., have been doing this over a longer period of time. So the plan also going forward is to broaden the clinicians who are able to offer virtual care across England as well. I'm aware there are a number of other hands going up. So Kirsty, I know you've been waiting.
Hi, thanks, Chair. Jen, I do welcome probably the clarity of the message, because I think that is what didn't come through on the webinar, and I think that's where it's caused a lot of the anxiety that you're probably seeing at your station visits, and that what, as staff governors, particularly Michael and I don't know about Frank, but I'm definitely hearing it from our people on the ground saying that they are concerned. So I do welcome the message that actually the clarification of exactly what that is. I think my concern as a member of staff and as a staff governor that's been here for a while is we have historically struggled to recruit into our contact centre clinicians. We've had vacancies for a long time, and actually it is a unique environment. And having worked in there for 8 years, it takes a special kind of person to sit in those rooms, and I don't think we acknowledge that enough. Whether you're an EMA or one of our clinical safety navigators or a senior clinician that sits in there, it is an environment that is quite difficult to sit in at times because of the pressure, because it's like a kettle boiling 24 hours a day. My concern is that we know we need to shift from our frontline workforce to bring clinicians into our contact centres. My concern is that I think it's how we sell it, whether they will move or whether we end up having to go externally anyway, because I think some of our people will not want to go into that environment because of personal reasons, travel or whatever. Perhaps they've been there before, and I think it's just being mindful that not everybody is going to want to go in there. And it's just having that in the back of our minds when we're talking about this, because this is about our hearts and minds. And I think our people at the moment have got an antibody straight away because of the webinar. It's about that messaging, Jen, and you getting out there and doing those station visits will be really good, because it will get that message out, and it'll allow our people to ask you as our chief exec the questions, because I think there's more questions after the webinar than there was even before it, and it's right for our people to do that. But for me, I'm really glad of the clarity. I think it's just that we need to bring our people on board, because this is the view of this is our strategy of what we were doing. It's a national thing, like Liz, like Chair, that you've said. I think we just need to bring our people on board, because at the moment I don't think we've got them, Jen, and that is a real concern.
Can I respond, Liz?
Yeah, okay? Of course, Jen.
Yeah. Thank you, Kirsty. And just to reassure you, I haven't got the fact that we shouldn't just be dependent on people moving into this model in the back of my mind. I've got it in the front of my mind, because it is absolutely a combination approach. So we absolutely want to bring people with us who come from a field ops background, as Liz said, have been trained as paramedics in a very, very much physical care focused way, who a number of people have successfully kind of taken on PACS and been really enthusiastic about it. And that's good to hear. And hopefully we can assuage what might be, like, I understand the communication perhaps wasn't as good as it could have been, and so people have sort of panicked a little bit. So hopefully we can work with people to engage them to understand that the change perhaps isn't so sweeping as they might have anticipated. Equally, what I don't want to do is try and push a square peg into a round hole. There is no point like forcing people to do something that they don't want to do, because they won't do it well. However, we do have to recognise, as you said, Kirsty, quite rightly, and everyone has repeated, this is national strategy, this is CCAM strategy, this is the future of the service that we provide. We're metamorphosing from a physical only response to a more of a pathway response, right from that front door care coordination in a virtual setting right through to that very important physical care we'll still provide. So our workforce does have to change. We need to employ a workforce that can deliver for the needs of our patients and the parameters of our service in the future. It's not going to be next week, but our workforce is going to shift in its form. And so people do also need to hear that. So we want people to work with us and be part of that change, but we also need to recruit a workforce who want to work in that setting, which is how we're going to be delivering this in the future. So I do completely agree with everything you said. I think there are learnings for us about the communication. I am very happy to converse about it everywhere that I go, which has been my experience for the last 2 weeks. And I'm very happy to continue doing that, but it has to be all of us talking about it together. So we really welcome your contribution as a staff governor. Change is difficult. Some people won't want to change. We need to recognise that the setting of change and not be dependent on just one thing. There's the role for PACS clinicians, there's a role for advanced paramedic practitioners, there's a role for a multidisciplinary workforce. We actually employ lots of nurses already very successfully within the contact centre environment, but we don't want that to be uni-professional either. We want to promote and support that multidisciplinary workforce. I just wanted to say as well, I think it's possible that within field operations there's a slightly not totally up-to-date concept of the contact centre environment. So yes, it is absolutely high pressure, as indeed all our services are, and it is different to work in a group contact centre setting than on an ambulance or in a specialist operations or wherever. But we have made very significant investment into the environment in our call centres. We have made significant investment and continue to reshape the leadership and the staff support. And I would point out that there are various flexibility benefits to that way of working, and we actually see a much more richer, equal, more diverse leadership and workforce within contact centres. So there are a whole sort of range of considerations around this, and we need to balance them, don't we, Kirsty? But really welcome the conversation and supporting people to understand what's being proposed and the short and longer term implications.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Kirsty, for the question. I've got 3 more hands up, so we're going to move along swiftly as we're almost out of time on this subject. Michael, you're up next.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jen, so far for what you suggested. I'm hearing that this is obviously a national priority. However, the NHS 10-year plan does place an emphasis on more neighbourhood health services that are local based. We currently have that model and it appears to be working very well. So I would just like to understand why we're potentially moving away from a model that fits in with that 10-year plan. And the second part of my question is around the financial aspect of this. The documents that I've seen would indicate there's potentially a 50% agile working, and we know that it costs several £1,000s per agile worker. And given the financial constraints on the trust, is that money best used in making staff agile, or is it investing in the hubs and increasing our services to virtual care?
You happy to respond, Jen?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you asked, Michael, because I'd forgotten that I wanted to give the view around national sort of services at scale and services at neighbourhood and what should be done at what level. So I think you're absolutely right. There is a very important element of NHS strategy, which is about designing services at a neighbourhood level for the populations and the service types that require that. I think what perhaps we might have slipped into, more generally, not just you and me, is a concept that therefore everything has to be provided at neighbourhood level. And of course, that's not so. If we think about it, we are actually providing at our core a kind of a regional ambulance service that needs to be resilient, scalable, replicable, not variable across places. We want to deliver that high quality of emergency and urgent care response to everyone in a at its core a kind of similar way, with a more tailored or neighbourhood connected element where that is necessary. And that, I think, is where the post-dispatch shared decision making comes in more, and that's what I was maybe didn't say as clearly as I could have done, but I think that's where we're focusing our attention around neighbourhood working and thinking about what perhaps we're not sort of suggesting we're going to have no hubs in future, just to be clear. We might have a smaller number, but those more connected hubs will deliver that neighbourhood care in partnership with the local services for the populations that require that more tailored care. So I think it's about what services we provide at a greater scale and what services we provide and connect into in a more neighbourhood way. So I hope that kind of makes sense, and we had a really good discussion about it in Kent the other day, and I think it's something that we can continue to talk about. We actually provide things quite differently in different places, you're probably aware, but the one of the problems with the hubs is that they work in completely different ways. So for things that need to be done more at scale, they're less effective and productive than they could be, whereas perhaps where we're talking about that post-dispatch shared decision making, that cohorts of people who are more perhaps more vulnerable or require that more tailored care, I think that's where the hubs really come into their own. So what we're trying to do is distinguish between the two, just to say that NHS strategy is a large and variegated beast. So there is also a lot of strategy documents saying that you should be running care coordination, single point of access at system level. So even NHS strategy itself, Michael, has different aspects, and in a sense, I suppose, recommends horses for courses. So what we're trying to do is get the right balance of what goes at that more regional, consistent level and what goes more locally. And there was a great example the other day of where we were saying, well, we need local care because local people know that this particular urgent care centre doesn't offer this particular service and it's wrong on the DOS. And so we're sending people to the wrong place. But actually, the issue there is that we're not properly running our Directory of Services, we're not properly engaging with our urgent care partners to say, no, actually, the criteria for urgent care are nationally set. They need to be adhered to by other providers, and we need to advocate for our patients that they should receive an equitable service. And that's different to needing to really tailor the care that when we're on scene with an elderly person who's got multiple comorbidities and a complex history with the local hospital. That's something that's much more appropriate to make sure that we keep that person safe, we don't unnecessarily convey them. So I hope I've given like a flavour of the kind of what we're trying to aim at, the difference between the more broader scale services and the local services. But it's a good point that we're continuing to converse about. I can't remember what your second question was, Michael, now.
Yeah, sorry, it was around the finances. Agile workers are kids cost over £5,000. So maybe we could reinvest that and fix maybe some of the DOS issues that you just highlighted.
Yes, we are looking at the business case for that. So firstly, I think we need to look at how much this is all costing in terms of that seems like an awful lot of money, but we do need to look at the finance and working that through at the moment. So that is a very cogent point, and we will need to review what we do. It is an existing arrangement, and I don't think that we can necessarily be in a setting nowadays with the NHS People Promise and the expectations of flexibility within the workforce where, we can't, we're not in a position to preclude working from home. But I do agree we are actively looking at the business case as we are actively doing the people impact assessment as well that I mentioned in my answer to Kirsty.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Jen. And thanks, everyone. Keep putting your comments in the chat. We're all reading them. So Jen will catch up on the comments that have followed her responses. 2 more questions and then we will move on. Paul, I know you've been waiting.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted clarification. I think I've understood what you said about travel expenses. Where staff are being asked to move, for example, from Ashford to Medway for 1 or 2 shifts a fortnight, depending on their working from home or agile working commitments. I think you said that their base remains Ashford, so that they would be reimbursed the costs of that travel, additional travel to Medway. Is that correct?
Yes, I can firmly confirm that any impression that has there's obviously a miscommunication. There's not a proposal to change people's base location. And so if you go once a fortnight to Medway, where previously your base was Ashford, your travel expenses would be calculated in the normal way for being asked to work on a different site. As Paul, I'm sure you're aware, there's a comprehensive policy on this point which would apply. And actually, I do think that misconception has arisen, and I'm not quite sure why, but clearly it has, because people have emailed me saying, this stuff about travel and taxis and things, and I don't really, we need to put something out about that because it would just be covered by the normal policy. I do appreciate, some people might have a shorter journey, some people might have a longer journey, but the idea is that is offset by the ability to work in an agile fashion. So yes, in short.
Thank you. I think that's very helpful. Some clarification would be beneficial because I think people do jump to conclusions inappropriately, and things get a headwind without they being stopped. Thank you.
Final one on this to you, Peter. Sure, that is.
Hey, thanks.
3 Peters.
Yes, confusing. Thanks, Liz. Jen, this is your first meeting with COG as acting Chief Executive, so I think I should welcome you on behalf of all of my colleagues, and in return I'm going to give you a really easy question, which is probably a 1-word answer. Part of the health bill going through Parliament will bring in the single patient record. I might have missed this, but is this something that ambulance staff will have access to?
Thank you, Peter, for your welcome. And I love the idea that the health bill will, in and of itself, bring in a single patient record. It certainly speaks to an ambition to have a single patient record. And I understand the new health secretary, or the health secretary of the moment, is very committed to digital and single patient records. Yes, there's obviously a slight complexity in ambulance services around the tracing of patients using NHS numbers, which makes the access to shared single patient records slightly trickier, but shouldn't be insurmountable. So yes, my understanding is that that applies to all of us. We do actually already have access to a whole range, as you might be aware, of shared patient records, and we're rolling out more. The issue at the moment is that the shared patient record is rather a multiple patient record rather than a single patient record, and it's easy to write that in a bill. I think maybe harder to actually achieve it, but we are very much engaged in that process.
Thanks,
Peter. And I'll cover more of that in my quality report in terms of where the trust is at the moment with that. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Jen, for answering all the questions thrown at you and what's in the chat as well. Let's move on. And just a quick reminder to everyone, you have got the latest BAF and IQR for you to dig into. There is an overall summary paper to make it a bit easier. It's a substantial document which outlines all the committees, but we will head through to the committee, and I'm doing a double whammy today because I'm going to lead on the quality committee. Peter.
Just before you do that, and just to Peter Shaw's request at the start of the meeting, I just thought it'd be just helpful just to set out the aim and the purpose of the summary paper that's in the pack. Sure. Is that okay? Yeah. So it was introduced a couple of meetings ago, and the aim. So as you said, Chair, we've got the BAF and the IQR, and then the three pillar reports from the last cycle of board committees. The aim of this summary paper was to give an overall sense of where the board is in terms of its assurance and where its sort of main areas of focus is going to be, or going to be. Subject to a discussion with Colin, going forward, this will be effectively for the chair to present. So he'll present it effectively on behalf of the board, and then we'll move into the three separate pillars. In advance of that, just to give an overview. So in terms of this summary, what the board, and this is from the last board cycle, so committee meetings in May, board in June, reflects as Jen did, the CQC outcomes are good for both of our core services. It's basically saying that the board is confident in the approach to the board assurance framework. So effectively, it's as we keep saying, it's North Star, keeping it focused on the right areas. Reflected the robust and compliant plan submitted that informs the BAF. Which the main commitments are to further improve C2 mean, break even, as we touched in the context of virtual care, lots of sort of challenges in that space. At the board meeting in June, as reflected in this report, there was a discussion about the fact that at month 2 we were off plan. In the next board cycle, so starting actually at the board development session next week, we've got a session on the recovery actions that are being taken to give the board, comfort that we're doing all the things that we should be doing as a collective board. Through the board committee cycle in July, we'll be digging into that further, and then there'll be a specific section on the board agenda in August that takes a look at this. The board just and the COG will know this because we had this discussion at the joint board COG, I think, in April. While we presented, or we signed off, the board signed off a compliant plan, it always knew there would be much risk and challenge to it, which is why we baked in early reviews of it. So there are monthly reviews at month 1, month 2, month 3, to give ourselves the best chance to sort of course correct. And this is what the board is effectively enacting now over these next few weeks. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Peter. Peter Shaw, does that answer your question at the beginning?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I just reflected last time that it was a really useful summary, but we didn't have an opportunity to come back on it. And I think that the plan of having the chair to present that overall paper and possibly take some sort of overall strategy questions on it would be a good development. So thanks for doing that.
Great, thanks. Happy to move on, everybody. Let's talk around our strategic pillars. The first one obviously being our patients and delivery of high quality patient care. You should have the summary paper in front of you. A number of areas we've already covered with your questions to Jen as well. Just briefly, we reviewed the risk report. There was some cleansing of the risk register needed, which is now being undertaken. And we had good assurance that the risk register is increasingly driving the focus of the trust through its governance structures and the right discussions to inform decisions. The head of risk attended the committee, Ruby, and she actually spoke to us about how proactively the new divisional leadership teams are reaching out to improve and support the risk discussions at divisional county level. So that was really good progress. There was, we felt, a potential gap in assurance around the robustness of our risk sharing of services that are subcontracted, and we've escalated that to the audit committee. And I know Peter Shield, as chair of the audit committee, is aware of that, and the management of contracts, etc., etc. We had a long discussion around virtual care and the plan. And also, you know, we were aware of Jen's plan along with our finance director and Lara from an ops perspective with the weekly meetings around this. And I think obviously we discussed the recruitment around virtual care hubs and also the push to improve our hear and treat rates. We are currently below target with those. We have improved, but we're not at the target level we would have liked to be. So again, as Jen has said, increased pressure and push to be able to achieve that. So our patients get more direct access, but it releases our fleet to actually respond, as we've said earlier, to our C2, C1 requirements. We spoke about the workforce model for virtual care from clinicians, and we have asked to see the workforce model to be made available. And there was a workshop in June. Following this, Karen, who was obviously senior NED also on that committee, we did have a catch up with Jen just to gain more assurance about the work and what was actually happening now, and Jen's given us an update on that. We had an update from Richard, our medical director, on the pathways of care. So previously we'd spoken about the 11 models of care. Along with our SCAS colleagues, we've changed the name to pathways. We believe clinicians and patients understand the word pathways rather than a model. So we're moving to pathways. And the great news is our SCAS clinical colleagues have all accepted those 11 pathways of care, which is great news. And I think there has been really strong working together across SCAS and CCAM around the care that we deliver up to our patients and the sharing of best practice across both organisations going forward. And also looking at our commissioners and what they require from us going forward. In terms of our shared care records, Peter, which you mentioned, it's really important to see our clinicians have the fullest picture they can before they arrive with our patients. Any prior medical history is being rolled out over this year, and it went live in April in Ashford, and then there is a phased rollout plan. We can only access what we can access and what's available, but certainly from an operational perspective and from a digital and IT perspective, we are pushing really hard to have a much fuller picture available to our clinicians when they respond to our patients. So I think that's the majority of what I wanted to cover, but very happy to take any questions from anybody. Karen, anything you'd like to add as you were on that committee as well?
Thank you. Yes, just trying to get off mute. Hello, everyone. I'm Karen. Those of you that haven't met me, I'm one of the other non-executive directors and senior non-exec director. Yes, Liz, thank you. I mean, I thought it was a very constructive and productive meeting, and I echo some of the key points that you've already made. I think the main points I'd probably come back to emphasise is to reassure the Council of Governors that the virtual care issues are very much at the front of all of our minds. And I think I have taken some good assurance and reassurance in some of the work that's already going on. I think there's been some very well made points today about the hearts and minds issues. And I think in a way I'm not too surprised about those kinds of responses, because that one would expect from this scale of change when you're involving quite a radical change of a whole professional model. And I've seen other professional groups behave in very similar ways when that happens. So I am encouraged by the amount of dialogue that's going on. And also, as Liz said, you know, Jen's active involvement in this, I think, is absolutely key. And I very much appreciate the time that she's putting into doing that. So I think it's something probably we'll be bringing back on a regular basis to the COG in coming months. And obviously, we'd like to keep all channels with you open on that point. So I think that would be my main point to supplement what you've said, Liz. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Karen. Any questions from governors? Excellent. Can we move on to our next strategic?
Liz got a hand from Harvey.
Oh, sorry, Harvey, I can't see your hand. Please go ahead.
You're mute, Harvey.
That's better. It's only a question. It's really related to one of the phrases that's used in the report and in other places, which is this left shift. And it goes back to the idea of communication and keeping things simple. And I struggle to know exactly what we mean by left shift, and I'm assuming that we mean moving across the sort of graph that we have of how we treat people, but I'm not quite sure that's precisely it. And I just wonder if there is a better phrase that could be used, rather than one which undoubtedly the board all understand what it is. I'm not sure that the people less involved in the discussions would know. It's a question rather than anything else.
Thanks, Harvey, and great suggestion. I agree. We all get immersed into the language, don't we, that we're used to using. So we will ask Jen and the exec, and perhaps with Janine into, yeah, Jen, go.
I'll take that point back into our communications, Harvey, because it's a really good point. I think people have started using left shift as a shorthand or an updated phrase for out of hospital care. What they really mean is less care in a acute hospital setting and more care in an out of hospital patient's own home or community based setting. I mean, it's essentially what it means as far as
hospital care. Or
being able to deliver services as locally as possible, which is why our navigation role is so important. So yeah.
But it's in communicating things in a time of change when everybody is uncertain, then the greater clarity we can get, the better. And that means simplicity and not having a new set of
set of words, and keeping things consistent, you know, because we're only going to be able to do it if we can all understand it in the same way and be consistent in how we deliver those services to patients.
Thanks, Harvey. Thanks. And great comment. And this also is current NHS language, this left shift. So I think we also need to interpret from an NHS Department of Health language as well around this. So thank you. It's great to get that feedback. Before I move on to people, just to remind, we are a committee held in public. We have had a question from the member of the public.
Liz, sorry, just before you move on, I think Richard has got his hand. Richard Britton has got a hand up, I think, still on the quality section.
Sorry, Richard.
I'm not sure because you're on your phone, Liz, whether you can see hands. But how are you?
I can only see 10 people at a time. Sorry, Richard. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So I'm just reading through previous meeting papers, and quite an important comment was made with regards to Kenton Medway from the chief exec, saying that there is a real risk of losing grip with regards to local reorganisations, with regards to KCC and all of those unitary changes that are going to be made. Now we've got a decision planned for, I believe, summer of 2026. That was the time that we were sort of told that a decision would be made on sort of where Kent and Medway would be going. I'd like to first point out that from what I've seen with my neighbours, my friends, my own healthcare, I think CCAM are doing a really good job in what is a very, very difficult landscape with Kent and Medway. It's a very, very challenging area. It's a huge region, as we're aware. And, you know, the staff that I come across, you just can't fault them. Gillingham EOC is just superb, whether it's a 1 or a 9 call, they're just doing you know, the best that they can in really difficult circumstances. But what assurances do we have as governors, and what assurances can the board take that emergency planning functions are going to be effective throughout those reorganization periods? Because it's already a very difficult environment, and KCC being the, you know, the type of sort of council that they are, it really risks becoming more challenging and more difficult than it actually needs to be. Are we actually in active communication with them, and is that communication actually, is it worthwhile, is it fruitful?
Thanks, Richard. And I'll ask Jen to respond, particularly around the divisional model for Kent as well.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Richard, and your kind words about CCAM services and staff. So I think so Kent is Kent and Medway is a big ICS, big county, and it's got quite a lot of variation in what the needs of the population are there. I think we are doing our best to engage at the right level and at the right scale. So we are connected through our division, our Kent division leadership and our strategy team with the changes that are going on around the kind of local government. But there is a need to be proportionate about that. You know, we're a stakeholder, but perhaps more importantly for us, we are also building those relationships with our Kent NHS system, and in particular those kind of relationships with the ICS, with the acute hospitals, to facilitate the best possible pathways for our patients. For example, same-day emergency care pathways for patients in the different parts of Kent. And then the other bit we're really focused on is looking at health inequalities and thinking about I mentioned it earlier, community resilience and volunteering strategy to really optimise that within the Kent and Medway area. So I hear your question as, are we aware of and sort of participating as a stakeholder in the the changes that might go on in Kent? Yes, but I think we're wanting to be proportionate about that, and we're wanting to, I guess, prioritise where we can make the most difference, which is with working with the Kent ICS, the NHS integrated care system, and the provider partners, and thinking about how do we address our kind of local volunteering offer in Kent. And we're doing all of that, as you say, Liz, through and with our kind of divisional leadership structure in Kent. So I don't think it's easy necessarily to always connect at the right level all of the time. But yeah, we are aware, Richard, we are aware of the challenges, we are aware of the changes, and I guess we're trying to just continue to maintain improving those patient pathways as we go through it. I don't know if that answer made sense. I think we're trying to do enough, but not too much, perhaps.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen. And I can't see any other hands up. So can I move forward, Peter, Lee?
Yep.
So, as I say, we are a committee held in public. We have had a question from a member of public that we're going to take under our people, and our people enjoy working at CCAM. Peter, are you happy to read out the question? And I think Harbour Jan has volunteered to respond for us and may need some input from Jen as well.
Yeah, so this was in the context of some recent board discussions, and in fact a similar question was raised at the board a couple of weeks ago about field operations and their over-establishment and the impact on newly qualified paramedics. So there were two parts to the question. First question is, and perhaps we'll answer them separately. The first question is, when did the Trust first identify that field operations were likely to become over-established? When was the decision made to implement the recruitment freeze? And what is the anticipated timeframe for the freeze to be lifted? Liz, I don't know if you or Harbhajan wanted to come back on that, because I know it's been, as I say, discussed at the board recently.
It has. Harbhajan, you happy to respond?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'm Harbhajan Brar, obviously one of the non-execs. I'm happy to pick this up, Peter. The first thing to say is that actually there isn't currently there's no vacancy freeze for field operations. The point we find ourselves is actually at the present moment there are currently no entry-level vacancies. So actually we're not doing any further active recruitment until that situation changes. So we will be keeping an eye on that vacancy position, but we've not actually implemented any recruitment freeze, so there isn't a timeline to be lifting it. It's just that there are no further vacancies for us to be able to recruit into. Hopefully that helps.
Great, thanks. And then the second part of the question that links to that is, what progression pathway is available for existing CCAM employees who qualify as registered paramedics during the recruitment freeze, noting what you just said, Harbhajan, and how does this align with the Trust stated commitment to internal progression and developing its existing workforce?
Peter, that then comes back onto the same, the two questions are interlinked. I mean, when vacancies do become available, we will advertise them openly and candidates will apply. But what we will also be doing, and we will come on to a little bit of that on the People Committee Assurance Report, is we're constantly looking at actually how do we develop our leaders, how do we skill our staff up in readiness for when opportunities arise. So from our point of view, when vacancies arise, they will be properly and openly advertised. Hopefully we've skilled our people up to be ready to be able to sort of apply for those and be successful in that process.
Right. Thank you. They were the questions, Liz. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and thank you very much to the public for asking the questions. We really welcome your input into the committee. Harbhajan, can I pass over to you then for our strategic priority of people, and our people enjoy working at CCAM?
Liz, thank you very much. Hopefully the report is fairly self-explanatory. First thing I wanted to thank people is it was really good to see observers from COG and the Shadow Board at the People Committee, because actually that degree of engagement is really helpful. The report is structured under alert, assure and advise, and the sort of 2 or 3 areas under alert that we picked up was we received a closure report in terms of the organisational operating model for last year, and the key milestones for this year are actually built into the new BAF. One of the areas we discussed was the corporate restructure, and the area that we do need to sort of focus in for this year is around the digital team. With the clinical operational model, it was really the focus was around strengthening and embedding the new governance arrangement and finalising leadership teams. And tied in with that is to make sure that we're actually giving them the right skills. So we also further on in that paper talked about the leadership development framework, which I'll come on to. But there were a couple of other things that we sort of wanted to pick up under the operational operating model. The key is striking the right balance. We've gone through a lot of change over the last year or so, but what we want to do is make sure that actually the changes we're putting in really focus in terms of helping us to deliver our operating plan. The plan itself is challenging, but certainly when we had the conversation, there was a strong belief it's achievable and is necessary. But there is a recognition, and there was a thank you to our trade union colleagues who have been very helpful in terms of helping us with some of those changes, and also the sort of HR team. Certainly the committee believes that the executive are sort of focusing on the right things and in the right order. And obviously there are issues around affordability but actually some of these changes are long overdue. One of the areas we definitely picked up on is on the leadership development framework. That's taken a lot of time, and it is an incredibly impressive document. We reviewed the final draft. It was recommended to the board for approval, and the board formally approved that. So really now it's operationalizing it, getting some of the development opportunities made available to as many people as we want to. The framework is aligned to the 6 principles of the NHS leadership and our trust values. And then the last area, which Jen has already picked up to a certain degree in some earlier conversations, are around the workforce model. I mean, the real focus around that is to sort of look at clinical workforce first and then non-clinical. We recognise the interface with the virtual care programme, and so there is that degree of overlap. And so, you know, there is a real sort of focus in terms of getting that model absolutely right. Getting workforce modelling, and I've been in the NHS for maybe too many years, has always been a difficult task, to say the least, in terms of getting that rhythm right. But actually, you know, the more data we use, the more intelligence we bring into the process will enable us to be a little bit more focused. A couple of areas around Assure were around sort of the NHS Education Quality Inspection Report. And we will be doing a fuller report on that, I think, later in the year. And we were also assured that there was good progress in terms of implementing the NHS England Safe Learning Environmental Charter. And then just a few things around the BAF, around advice. We had good visibility of some of the key risks coming out from the BAF. We noted there's a gap in assurance relating to the fire assessment, which has now been picked up by the Finance Committee. So we just wanted to make sure that sat in the right place. We also had quite a discussion around exploring sickness absence, and there's a new management attendance policy where it went live this month with training sessions planned. And what we'll do is look to see what the impact around that will be. There's a new comms engagement and recognition dashboard on the back of our excellent staff survey results. But again, it's about how do you then take them out to the business? How do you actually look at it at a local level? So that was, again, something really key. From the IQR, we also picked up suspension metric being still too high. And so what we're trying to do is support managers to be able to sort of really review suspensions. In terms of appraisals, it was good around appraisals and Statman training. That's going in the right direction. And again, for us, that was a key indicator of good leadership. It's about making sure that you're focusing on the right things, and it's the quality of as well as getting the people through in terms of PDRs, it's also the quality of the conversation. Staff survey, we discussed that in terms of the process of tracking the areas where we need to focus in, because it's too easy just to focus on the staff survey in its entirety. There are one or two pockets that we would really want to sort of try and do a little bit more of a deeper dive. And then the last area is the National Education Training Survey, and there was a better response rate. Whilst there was some positive bits out of that, so it's you know, there was engagement with our wellbeing resources, which was positive, but the data still continues to highlight that the reporting rates around bullying and discrimination, as well as specific sexual safety challenges and patient interactions, weren't where we wanted to be. Whilst people knew what the process was to be able to raise concerns, it was about actually ensuring that people felt that something was going to be done about it and that there weren't any ongoing consequences. So that's something we will continue to keep an eye on. So hopefully, Liz, that's a fairly quick run through, but picking up the key points. So really open it up to any questions our governor colleagues may have.
Thanks, Harbhajan, and let's go the cans. So Harvey, you were in first.
Right. First thing is, I've board for Britain over the last 5 years about appraisals. So coming within 1% of the target is something that needs some applause. What my concern is in this area, though, is we've now got that up. I've always said appraisal is actually a cost of failure, because if we have a good one-to-one conversation with our people and we keep them informed and everything, then appraisals is really just writing it up. What I would like to see, and I don't at the moment, is appraisals being part of a holistic approach to getting the best from our people. One which brings together all the things around people development, people coaching, training, It's about promotion. It's about career planning. It's about talent management and succession planning. It's about how we do selection, recruitment, and it all needs to be rooted in things like our ethos, our values, our competencies, the skills we need, and the strategy, because things change. At the moment, I don't see a sort of a model, and it's a sort of performance and development model. And I also see that training is with the chief paramedic officer. I'm not quite sure where the rest of that holistic bit sits, but it seems to be a bit split. I just wonder if we can take a look at having something which brings it all together so that people can understand.
Thanks, Harvey. Harbhajan, over to you.
Yeah, Harvey, all that you said is music to my ears as a chief people officer, as a HR director. The problem, quite often what we have is we should be having ongoing conversations all the time and recognizing that in some instances there are staff members who don't have those, and so trying to formalize it. In terms of sort of trying to cover the whole gambit, it's very, very difficult just in terms of the amount of time people have. But I'm in the same place as you. If you have good quality conversations, you shouldn't actually need an appraisal almost on one level is where we should be trying to get to. But, you know, it's really important that it's not just a tick box exercise. So when I certainly was feeding back to you, it was great we were close to the target we've set ourselves. But that is just meeting a target. What we do also need to do is look at the quality of the appraisals, the outcomes, whether, you know, actually some of the objectives that actually are agreed are then being properly followed up in terms of reviews, etc. So there's nothing that you've said I would necessarily disagree with. It is about actually making sure that we normalize this, that actually this is about good management, this is about good engagement, this is about good communication. So it's all of those things.
Yeah, and the thing I saw elsewhere in the documents is, of course, that we're doing more training of first-line managers. That's absolutely key, and I totally support that. But this is part of it, and it's helping them understand that what they're doing with their people fits into the business in this way and keeping it on a simple level.
Harvey, first-line managers are so key because quite often we just throw them into managerial roles without skilling them up, and actually quite often then they take sometimes, if they're wrong behaviours, all the way through as they work their way through management. So dear to my heart, I did a NEBS course some 35 years ago when I first became a manager, and I still remember key components of that. So yeah, absolutely, it's part of our overall, when we talk about leaders, we talk about leaders throughout the organisation, not necessarily just at the top of the organisation. I'm mindful of time, and there are other hands coming up. And
Thanks.
And Michael, you're up next, please.
I've got Kirsty's hand up in my list.
I was going to say, I think Kirsty's first.
Yeah,
Kirsty.
Go, Kirsty.
Hi, thank you. Harbhajan, mine is just it's for a point of clarity, really, in your report. So in the report, it says there's also a link to the critical care review due report in Q3. Yet Jen, in a chief exec's report, it said specialist and advanced practice. There is an absolute difference. Can I ask for clarity? Is it a critical care review, or is it specialist and advanced practice across the group model? Because actually, that's really important for me.
Jen,
do you want to come in?
Did you want me to answer that, yes, Harbhajan?
Yeah.
So Kirsty, as part of our group joint clinical model, we've committed to looking at specialist and advanced practice across the group in due course. The first stage of that is the review of the critical care paramedicine service, so like the needs of patients who have critical care requirements is the first phase of it, as it were, and that's the bit that we're commissioning support to help us do and looking to deliver. It will be interim findings by October, because October is creeping ever nearer, and then it will take a little bit longer to do the full review, because although we don't want to kind of over engineer it, we need to do a thorough job, and that's why we're doing it independently. So that's just part one, as it were, Kirsty, and we're hoping if that's a successful mechanism, it may be a mechanism that we might use for further elements of the advanced, enhanced and specialist practice family, as it were. We will need to look at it in a joined up way. So what obviously you're aware is sometimes, you know, you don't want to be doing it in silos. So the idea is looking across, but we can't like commission reviews of everything all at once. So we're starting with CC services.
Chair, if it's okay, if I could just come back. I'm wondering whether, can we change the terminology that we use then in that it is a specialist in advance, so that actually it's clear in our papers that it's a special in advance, but we are starting with critical care, because that just so what's been said in one is it's specialist in advance, which is absolutely fine and understandable that we would do that, but this just says critical care. It doesn't say that this is the first part of the specialist advance review. That would be my request. Thank you.
Kirsty, we can certainly take that away, because it's about actually so people don't see it sitting on its own and not a part of a broader set of reviews that will take over a period of time. So yeah, no, happy to do that. Yeah.
Brilliant, thanks. I can see 3 more hands up: Michael, Steve and Richard. Michael, you good to go?
Yeah, thank you. Just on the subject of our people, and it's not something that was necessarily covered in your report, I'd like to raise the concerns that I'm hearing from our staff, and particularly our first line managers, around the proposed wellbeing changes, particularly the move away from locality-based practitioners, where we know the staff feel trusted, they feel valued, they build up good rapport and relationships, to an EAP approach where there is concerns that it's going to become more generic and less tailored to the realities of ambulance work. So I'd like to understand what assurances could be given that this shift will actually improve the staff wellbeing outcomes rather than diluting them. And given that our current sickness rate is around 72,000 days per year over those 5,000 staff that we have, what benchmarking is there to show that an EAP-led model will actually reduce the absence and associated costs compared to what we have now?
I think there's two. Yeah,
I'm happy to answer. Yeah.
I'm happy answering it at a very high level, Michael, and then maybe we can have some further conversations. I think what we're going to have to do is to keep is to ensure that actually we regularly have the conversations with the key players to be able to say what's the impact, and then, you know, and not necessarily just sort of, so it is about, you know, as you go through change, you know, it's about what's the impact analysis that we're actually undertaking, and health and well-being has to be one of those key components. How we build that in, I think, is something that we can have a conversation about in terms of taking that away. But I've also seen sort of Jen's hand go up if there's anything else that maybe she wants to add to that.
Thanks, Jen.
If that's okay, Liz. Yeah, I mean, I certainly, Harbhajan, if you're open to a conversation that can take place, there has been quite an extensive consultation process around this change, and I suppose I agree with you, like no change can be guaranteed to have X effect or Y effect. You know, you have to keep things under review. I think that's a more general point about any change. So if we only ever made changes we could guarantee the effect of, we probably wouldn't make very many changes. But we have to find the best, you know, evidence and proposal for going forward. So I think there are some significant reasons for change in terms of the sort of resilience and governance of the existing service, and some very good models out there of employee assistance programs. They are, you know, now quite widely used within the NHS, and they are more scalable, potentially more resilient, and allow us to shift our health and wellbeing model to a more resilient model. And I think it's part of our kind of organisational resilience priority that's a really important change for us to be making. But I think those conversations that you've mentioned, Harbhajan, can continue to take place as part of the change process, and perhaps engaging in the next stages in terms of making sure the employee assistance programme is commissioned in the most robust and effective manner will be something that's going to help.
Thanks, Jen. And Michael, I think with Peter, this is an action point to take forward, isn't it? Because we don't have all the answers for you right now. So I think if we bring that back to a future Council of Governors under the people agenda item, that would be helpful. Yes. Right, in the interest of time, so let's go to Steve and then Richard.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions, but I'll just pick one because I can see we've got a lot of discussion. Can you tell me how comfortable the board are and how you go about the process of balancing current activity and keeping the organisation delivering on a day-to-day basis with the demands of all the changes that we've been talking about? It's just, and I don't have, it's not a smart answer for it at all, but it's just, we've got such high ambitions for the organisation. My question is really about, are we going to overload ourselves with everything that's going on all at once?
Steve,
yes,
Steve,
we are, aren't we?
How comfortable are we? If we were completely comfortable, we've not actually set ourselves enough of a challenging agenda, will be something that I would say. So that's something that's always important, that we do set ourselves some fairly ambitious challenge. But we do need to recognise, and certainly at the beginning of the report, we did identify there are some key concerns in that space in terms of getting that right, because inevitably I think across all NHS organisations, you have those competing interests. And it's so long as we are constantly being provided with the right information to be appropriately assured, we will have some difficult conversations about getting some of those balances right. So it's an ongoing conversation we have at the board on a regular basis. And that's what the assurance framework is fundamentally for. So, you know, how comfortable am I? If I was completely comfortable, I'm not sure that I would be necessarily doing as good a job. So there are things inevitably all of us for our respective spaces are anxious. We also have different areas that we want to focus in on. So we also are having sort of pushes and pulls between ourselves as non-exec directors as well. So I think hopefully that answers it to a certain degree. I can see, I don't know whether Karen wants to come in on the back of that or whether it was something slightly different. Yeah.
Can we go to Richard and then we're finished with Karen and then we will take a liquid break, I think. Richard, to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Harbhajan, for quite a comprehensive report. Harbhajan, I just wanted to just point out from a Kent and Medway perspective, staffing and workforce has always been at the forefront of my mind. Although I'm not a staff governor, it's obviously, if we don't have happy staff, then we're not going to have happy patients. So I'm quite sort of keen just to sort of establish the fact that a workforce can comply with changes while still completely lacking confidence in those changes. And obviously the trust future strategies, they rely on huge significant transformations. So, you know, whether you look at virtual care, estate changes, fleet changes, CCAM and SCAS as a wider group model, all of these are huge transformations. So what evidence do we have as an organisation that the workforce itself has both the capacity and the confidence to deliver the changes without adversely affecting staff well-being and staff retention? Because obviously these are, quite important changes that we're talking about. And how is staff confidence being monitored during these transformational changes?
Well, Richard, that's a big question, but a really important one. You know, we are as good as our people, and so things like staff survey actually sort of, is one example in terms of actually how we get feedback through our leadership framework, through the conversations we're encouraging them to be able to actually, in terms of the skills we're asking them to be able to pick up, through our comms routes. So there are many different routes, but inevitably, whenever you're undertaking a change program, the evaluation component of it and the engagement component of it, for me, is absolutely vital. I've been in the HR space all my working life, and it's compliance is one issue, but what you've got to do is take the hearts and minds, because actually it takes that compliance to a completely different level. It's more than. So I think every time we do undertake a change program, we do need to actually constantly evaluate whether it's actually having the right impact. And it's also important for us to say, actually, maybe that's not the right thing to do. And for us occasionally to step back and say, we need to rethink this. So, you know, for me, in any major change program, that's quite a key component in terms of getting some of those right. So, you know, the focus around sort of, you know, the people committee agenda is to try and get as much of that feedback. And so certainly from, you know, governors, etc., if there is local intelligence as well, how do you feed that back into ourselves to make sure that we're sort of thinking and focusing on the right areas?
Thank you, Harbhajan.
Thank you. Karen, last word to you on this subject.
Thank you. I'll be brief if I may, but just to respond to a few people to supplement additional reassurance. So Harvey's points on the appraisal process, I think it's also important to point out the other programme of work that's supplementing that, which is around clinical supervision. And I think we're getting some early good signs of some of the benefits of that. And that sits alongside that quite nicely in terms of the individual's clinical practice. Coming back to Michael about the employee assistance programme, my recollection was that this piece of work came out of a report that was done last year, I think it was, where there were a number of issues that were raised around the whole wellbeing offer within the trust. And my understanding is that this is in response to that, because there were some inconsistencies across the patch about how this was being delivered in different areas. And also some gaps that were identified. So I just wanted to put some context to that, if I may. I agree with Harbhajan's response to Steve about it does feel uncomfortable sometimes, but that is part of the challenge that we're facing. And in a way, I also take some assurance from that we have to keep looking at it and reviewing where we are and making adjustments as and when. My final point was in relation to the question from Richard about, you know, how do we know whether we're making things better or worse? And this was in the people space, but also I think we're very preoccupied that with the Quality and Patient Safety Committee in terms of patient quality and safety. And I think there are certain ways in which we're doing that in both committees. For me, it's very, very clear about what the intentions are, what the outcome measures are going to be. And I'm beginning to see some more reassurance for me as a NED in terms of the new divisional structure, where they're actually setting up the divisional clinical governance groups. And I had the pleasure of attending one in Kent last month. And they are beginning to get now their own data from the different levels and different sections for people, quality and finance, and beginning to take more responsibility rather than the aggregate trust data. And so they're able to do much more tailored work, and we're able to be clear about any inconsistencies and trying to build a consistent area. And I'm also very encouraged by, as has been mentioned elsewhere, about the work we're doing with SCAS to try and look at that across the broader patch. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Karen. And thanks, everyone. Appreciate your robust challenge and questions back to us as NEDs. We're going to take a break now. We can see you're all wilting a little bit on the screens. Could we be back at 11:45? And we'll lead with you, Suzanne, on sustainability, if that's okay.
No problem, Liz. Yeah.
Go find a cool spot, top your fluids up, have a comfort break. We'll see you shortly. Thanks everybody for coming back in a timely manner. You all look a bit more refreshed now that I can see you on the screen. I've got my earpods in just so you can't hear my fan whirring in the background, trying to cool me down. Let's move on, and we're talking about sustainability under our strategic priorities, and we are a sustainable partner. So over to you, Suzanne.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, everybody. I've really enjoyed our conversation so far. And I'm just very minded, reflecting on the conversations, that it's very complex, isn't it? Because, of course, we're committed to high quality care. Of course, we want people to enjoy working here, totally endorse the comments that our various governors have made, but also we have to be sustainable. And that is a huge ask from the team. You will have seen my report. A few things I'd like to draw out as we go through on that. And again, I quite like the alert, assure, advise structure of the report. I hope that you find it useful. The financial performance, is always going to be a key part of our committee. You know, the ask is quite significant. It's 4% effectively, and that's really around a cost improvement plan. Interestingly, and I think it's worth reflecting on this, that other organisations across the NHS have a far more significant ask. So even though it is a big ask, and I don't minimise that at all, it is also testament, I think, to the work that CCAM has been doing for the last few years in looking at our operations and seeing what are we doing and how are we doing it and can we make it better. So I don't want to minimize it at all. We're very mindful of the ask, but also I think in the face of that, it's also worth taking a beat to understand just how much progress has been made. And progress continues. You will see on our agenda, we had a significant discussion about digital. And again, we're very mindful that although we're an autonomous organisation, we're working within the NHS ecosystem. So obviously, they're fairly significant procedures that we have to follow in that respect. Again, the digital team are making significant progress there. It's a vital way to make us sustainable going forward, these ways of working. And I'm not going to rehash the discussions we were having earlier. But again, it's enabling us to deliver patient care that is timely and is appropriate. We have asked the team in the reports that they bring to the Finance and Investment Committee to give us a more focused timelines approach to this, because obviously there is so much happening, it would be easy to not see the wood for the trees. So what we want to understand are what are the key deliverables, the must-haves, the timelines for that. And again, for us from an oversight perspective, to ensure that we're aware of slippages, if any. The driver training business case, I'm not going to spend time on that, but we're very mindful of just how important our vehicles are and that our staff have the appropriate skills, etc., to be able to deliver their roles effectively and promptly. The alignment with SCAS is something that I think we're going to keep coming back to time and time again. This is a massive initiative, and it is an initiative that I think we expect to see benefits from, otherwise we wouldn't be doing it. But of course, it's not as easy as snapping your fingers. There are very detailed and significant discussions to be had. And I know that the exec team are already doing that. We're very interested in our committee to make sure that the decisions we are making, that we always have an eye to what this means for our working relationship with SCAS as well. And again, that's something we're mindful of, we're working through. It's something I'll be raising with Colin when I meet with him next week, because although our committee, of course, is for CCAM, we're very mindful that this partnership agreement, this working together with SCAS, has ramifications for us, and the decisions that we make, we need to be really mindful of that. The fire safety piece, we took assurance from the work that the teams are doing there. And I saw Richard's comment in the chat. Absolutely, the estates falls under the Finance and Investment Committee. We are very minded of the fire safety aspect and keeping our staff safe, and also understanding our estates and what serves our estates best. So I will take that forward, Richard, and respond to you in due course. It's interesting. There's been so much fantastic work, actually, and I think this, I would like to give a shout out to the governance team, to Peter in particular, around the risks. This organisation, the risk register is live. It really is live and dynamic, and I think that's something that those of us who sit in other boards, you don't always see. I do believe it's best practice, and I have very much enjoyed the discussion around risk, because I think if you understand the risks of your organisation, well, then you can absolutely speak to the direction of travel and the future and forward direction of the organisation. And a good news story, the Nexus House project is, well, probably completed now. It is completed now, I think, bar maybe some of the final snagging that you always have to deal with. I'm sure Jen will respond to that if a question, if any of you are interested. But again, many of us will have seen these large capital projects, you know, and in my experience, and in a previous life, I did work on these types of things, it was rare to bring them in on time and on budget. So again, I think this is testament to what the team are working on and the commitments, the realism that they are bringing to their approach. A few other things I would just like to reflect on. We have new digital metrics coming forward. They were discussed at depth. This is iterative. Okay, so we're saying thank you to the team for bringing these. Let's see if they are actually appropriate. Are they telling us what we need to know? Are they giving us the assurance that we need? So again, this is very much work in progress. Other than that, I might just, if you don't mind, Liz, take a beat. I very much, as I said at the outset, enjoyed chairing the Audit and Risk Committee. As part of that year-end wash-up, I do get to meet the external auditors separately, which is really important for me as a board member, as a non-exec board member, to be able to triangulate, you know, with and where I can. And I think it's important for the governors to know that they were extremely complimentary about the team. A key question I had was about the depth and capacity of the team. Do we have the right people, basically, is the question that I'm asking. And they were absolutely adamant that we do. And I think that is reflected because one of the first, and in fact, the first discussion I had with Simon when I joined the board, and it was, you know, let's get to know each other, let me understand CCAM, and he raised some of the issues we've had historically around estates. And I think you'll find that that was reflected then in the discussions with the external examiners, or the external auditors rather. So for me, that was really good to understand and triangulate and ensure that the team are focused and are aware of the business, because I think somebody mentioned at a remove, which you are as a board, but it's really important for us to chart a direction of travel that is effective, not just for our current constituents, so not just our current staff and our current patients, but this is about making sure we are ready for the future and that we can continue to march forward into the future for, you know, the patients and the staff we don't even yet have. So I think I leave it there, Liz, in the interests of time, but also I have a slight tendency to talk in bullet points, but I'm very open to questions and I'd like to hear from people. Before I go to Harvey, I should also say we've had a lot of governors coming to observe our committee, and I really welcome that, by the way. And I think it was Paul, I think it might have been Paul who observed that committee. And we really do value your feedback because I believe that this is work in progress. We talk about continuous improvement, so we have to live continuous improvement, and that applies to me and to the committee. Harvey, thanks for giving me that final say. You're muted currently, by the way. Just
sorry, Suzanne, can I just go to Peter S first? Peter, is there anything you'd like to add as chair of the Audit and Risk Committee so that Harvey can unmute himself?
No, most of it has been already covered very well. The thing that is very encouraging and wasn't covered in great detail is that actually we are for month one actually on target for our efficiency program. If we can keep that going for the next 11 months, that will be absolutely brilliant. And of course, we do have a small surplus as well. But so from that point of view, it's incredibly encouraging as well. And we continue to keep our focus, of course, on the C2 mean, which is better than last year, slightly off trajectory by 3 seconds. And our hear and treat, we talked about that already, again, only slightly behind the target. So we're very focused on the right things as well. The annual report and accounts, as already mentioned, have been signed off. We had our meeting yesterday. Our external auditors who are new to us, we had KPMG last year. We've got Bishop Fleming now. They're very good and we work closely with them as well. So at this point in time, no, I'm happy. We are in the right place. Thank you very much, Liz, for asking.
Thanks, Peter. Happy Audit and Risk Committee Chair. There we go. Harvey, over to you.
Right, I'm off mute. It's a question really around the C2 mean. because that's particularly commenting. That's I think Peter and Suzanne have both said it's sort of a bit off trajectory. And I just wanted to understand what the trajectory was, because if I look at the actual numbers, the April figure, and I think that's the one you're talking about, that was 22 and a bit seconds, as opposed to a target of 25 and a bit. So it is 3 seconds off the target, but in the right direction. So I'm not quite sure, because we want to bring it down. We'd rather like it to be 18 again, but so I just don't quite understand why we're concerned with my interpretation of the numbers, which may be wrong. And the other part of this question is, and this probably is more for Liz, is in the FIC report, we've got reference to the C2 mean. In the quality and patient bit, there wasn't the same reference. So, and I just wonder, is that because between the two committees, there's been a decision as to who's going to report on what, so that we don't get the same thing twice, or what's the reason? So,
do you want to go first, Suzanne, and then I'll pick up from the quality committee?
I do, because I wanted to check with Peter, because the initial report that went to board had the wrong number in it. And then I also would like, so I want to clarify that as a point of information. Peter.
Yeah, no, that's right. I'll just put that in the chat. Sorry, Suzanne. Yeah, so that was picked up at the board. I think we said in the board report it was, which is the same copy that comes to council. It was 3 seconds. It was in fact 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
And Jen's probably best placed to explain the reason for that, Harvey, because there's a trajectory we have where we perform better in these supposedly quieter months compared to winter months.
Yeah. So Peter, so Harvey, I wanted to respond to that because I raised it yesterday that it was shown as 3 seconds, but it is 3 minutes. But I will ask Jen to respond to that. But could I also go in the interests of time, maybe, so I make a note of these questions, and then Connor, could I ask you for your questions, and then Paul his, and then Liz, that might be a way of making sure that we bring it in on time. Is that okay, Connor?
Yeah.
Thanks, Suzanne, and I'm looking forward to observing your committee in the next month, actually, in the 16th.
Thank you.
Just on the cost improvement plan, have we engaged the organisation properly for a bottom-up view of cost savings opportunities? Because I guess those of us who've worked in different organisations know that those closest to the coalface have a very good perspective on where there is wastage and opportunity. And small numbers multiplied many times can add up to a substantive contribution. Thanks.
Yeah, excellent. I'll take that one as well, Connor. Thank you. Paul.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick question on asset management. I understand that CCAM works successfully collaborating with Kent Fire and Rescue and is exploring similar arrangements in Sussex and Surrey. My question is about, well, I mean, obviously the collaboration with other blue light services is important, but Kent Fire and Rescue are currently undertaking a consultation on closing stations in Grain, Wye, Chilham, Westerham and Cliff. So the question is, does that affect the collaboration, and are you intending to respond to the consultation? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And yes, I'd seen that on the news actually about that consultation that was happening. I think the one question I'll take out of all of those comes from you, Harvey. No, Liz and I haven't decided that the C2 mean sits in one committee or the other. We do try as a board to be extremely streamlined. So for me, it is around sustainability, and there's funding attached to us meeting targets. And you knew this, of course, sorry. So, of course, I keep bringing that back to Finance Investment Committee, whereas Liz, of course, will be looking at it for quality and safety perspective. Liz, I'm guessing. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, if I can just come in, C2 mean will always sit within quality because it's around the quality of patient care and outcome. And any delays we know increases patient harm in terms of our response. So I think you will continue to see it in both committees, one as a target, which will sit with Suzanne's agenda, but one as a quality patient outcome that will sit within Quality Patient Safety Committee.
Yeah. And before I hand over to Jen, Harvey, I think it's something we're really trying to do is make sure that, you know, accountant as I am and number loving as I am, and the people who've come to observe us, and hopefully you see that as well, Conor, we are really mindful of our patients and patient outcomes and our staff and our staff well-being and being able to succeed. So we definitely try to look at that finance and investment piece in the round in terms of supporting the business of delivering for staff and patients. So Jen, I don't know if you got it, but I've got 3 questions. One is the comment about being off trajectory on the C2 mean, which Harvey raised. The other one was for Conor, saying when it comes to cost improvement plans, do we discuss it and invite people coming forward from the grassroots bottom up? And the third one was from Paul with regard to the asset management and in the context of Kent Fire and Rescue going into consultation and closing sites that perhaps we might have wanted.
Thanks, Suzanne. So we're aware of the Kent Fire and Rescue consultation. I've passed that on to colleagues in Kent Division who are looking at that, and also our estates team. So I don't believe we have active plans to share any of the sites listed for closure at this point in time, but I'm not close to obviously the specific details being picked up in that team. But yeah, I can assure you, we're well aware of that, and I don't think we anticipate an immediate operational impact. But clearly, if we're all closing sites, there'll be no sites left. So we need to think about it in a joined up way, don't we? The second question about cost improvement, kind of grassroots engagement. We did do a programme of grassroots suggestions in previous years. And so that is something that is very welcome. Whether or not we will do that this year, I think sort of slightly depends on where we get to with the financial plan. So at the moment, we're in a reasonably good position financially. So I think our anticipation is more to kind of keep the messaging going that we need to all be as rigorous, sustainable and mindful of value for money and use of resources as we can be, as opposed to trying to curate like lots of local initiatives, because although very helpful, that also has an overhead in terms of leading that and managing it and keeping track of it. But yeah, it remains certainly something that we'd be thinking about, Conor. And then on the performance, so I think it can easily, because of the timings of some of the meetings, it can get a little bit confusing, because we obviously track the C2 mean performance against a trajectory at multiple points. We're always looking at it because it's so important. So we can get ourselves a little bit confused as to whether we're talking about an end of like the month position or a live position. And I think a live position was discussed actually at the committee, which is where the 3 minutes comes from. So at the end of April, we were a little bit behind the trajectory, and at the end of May, we were a lot further behind the trajectory, more like 4 or 5 minutes. So I think the position discussed was potentially somewhere in between the two. Essentially, the trajectory, as Pete said, answered the question beautifully. The ask is to deliver an average of 25 minutes across the whole year, and because of the profile of demand, which usually, not at the moment, is lower in the spring and summer and higher in the autumn and winter, we plan to deliver a lower CT mean in the spring and summer and a higher CT mean in the autumn and winter, because of course we can't suddenly have twice as many ambulances in December as we have in May. That's not operationally viable, nor indeed staff. So we vary through the year. So the trajectory for sort of April and May is actually closer to like 20 minutes, whereas that's offset by anticipating delivering more like 27, 28, 29 in the autumn and winter. So when we talk about being off trajectory, we're behind where we need to be. It's not necessarily the thing to do to compare it to a figure of 25 minutes, if you see what I mean.
Thanks, Jen. Was that sufficient, Harvey?
Yes. I mean, it's what I assumed, but I was just surprised that it was as low as 20 as the trajectory. at this time of the year, because I hadn't appreciated the radical difference between the two parts of the year. I think if we're going to have known that the sort of the target for this month is that, then could we have that somewhere in the comments so that it's very clear what we've been talking about? And then people like me won't ask silly questions.
No, and Harvey, people like me won't write 3 seconds as a complete whatever when I mean 3 minutes, get it picked up at board. I spotted it when I read the paper. But I'll tell you what's interesting, though. It's prompted a couple of interesting discussions, and I really welcome that. And then just before I stop talking, Liz, the other thing too is, of course, governors, and particularly our staff governors, we really do appreciate the messaging and the understanding around the asks that we are making and helping us be balanced and sustainable while delivering quality care and staff, happy staff. So we really do appreciate your insights and understanding of the complexity of what CCAM is. Thanks, Liz.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks, everyone, for your challenges and your questions as well. I don't see any more hands up. So can we move on to the governance section? And Peter Shaw, I think you're going to lead on all of this, aren't you?
Oh.
With some support from Peter Lee. So can we go in terms and a really interesting paper and debate, which I did briefly discuss with Colin yesterday. So he has also read this paper and will pick it up at the next Council of Governors. So the future of Council of Governors, I think, Peter, you're going to help navigate us through this, but over to you, Peter Shaw.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. I'll take the paper as read and just put out a few points and then open it up for discussion. It's a bit kind of grandiose to say this is an existential issue for councils of governors, but of course it is. I mean, we might take issue with the justification for removing the requirement. I pulled out that note from the department that we might take exception to, but I think we need to recognise the political wind, and if a proposal is in a government bill and the government has a very large majority, it's prudent to expect that that proposal will go through. I've been following the discussion in Parliament to an extent that there's not a great deal of attention on this issue. There are more important issues that people are talking about. But just as a slight aside, there is one member of the bill committee in our area, which is the MP for Ashford. So if any of our Kent governors are constituents of that MP, and you have to be a constituent of an MP to lobby them, but if you happen to live in the Ashford area, you could lobby that MP, and he actually is a former mental health nurse, so has some background. The timetable for implementation obviously isn't yet stated, but it seems sensible to assume worst case. So becomes law around about November this year, and COGS cease to exist from next April. We don't know that's the case, but let's assume it. Now, in terms of the perspective of the trust and all this, I guess there's a spectrum of reflection that NEDs and members of the board might be thinking at the moment. One end of the spectrum is, oh, that'll be good. That's a few more meetings I won't need to attend. If there's no more councils of governors, I can get on with some real work. And I guess at the other end of the spectrum, you might be thinking, well, we get some quite useful perspectives and challenges from this setup. So is there a way in which we might still get some perspectives and challenges? So the requirement on the trust is going to be, quotes, more dynamic arrangements. And I was interested to see, Liz, the work that's being done in that was reported in the quality report about the patient's voice. And we might want to be starting to make a distinction between the patient's voice and the public's voice, if you see what I mean. But there's also obviously the staff voice and there's the knowledge and insight of your stakeholders. So I guess what we're saying is we'd like an opportunity to influence your thinking on what arrangements you might want to come to. We can see that pragmatically there's a need to wait perhaps until November until you get into those discussions. But just bear in mind, we're contemplating our demise at the moment. So it would be helpful to us and perhaps to our morale to hear a positive response now that says, if and when you get to that point, you'd be quite interested in hearing our views, even if there are disappearing views, if you see what I mean. So that's our position, and we're looking to the Trust to see whether you would be interested in hearing our perspectives on the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Peter Lee, do you want to just come in, and then I'm very happy to summarise following my discussions with Colin yesterday as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the short answer to the question, Peter, is yes, we would. I'm sure be interested. And I think this is something we need to continue to come back to over the next few months. So council next meets in September, and that'll be Colin's first attendance as chair, and I know I've spoken to him a couple of times about this, and we want to have a discussion then about that. And then we got a joint, actually, coincidentally, a joint board and COG, I think, in November time, which hopefully should coincide with getting more clarity about what the health bill will actually say. At the moment, as you've said, Peter, we still lack certainty, but I think it seems likely that the statutory role of governors and need for members will be removed from March, April next year. I mean, that's kind of our working sort of hypotheses, really. I can't see that not being the case. Just on a personal level, I don't quite buy into the rationale that's being cited, because, it says that we move governors to allow kind of organisations to innovate and tailor their approach more. But of course, like most others, in fact, if not all other NHS organisations, we do, of course, in addition to the current arrangements with councils and members, have arrangements to engage patients, public, staff, etc. And probably Peter and others, that's probably where we'll be heading. So we're in discussions at the moment with colleagues in quality and nursing I know they're doing lots of work on patient-public involvement. We have the patient safety partners and other arrangements through PSERF, and of course we have our new volunteering community resilience and volunteering strategy. So there'll be opportunities there. And I think I had a meeting with my peers in Surrey and Sussex. We have a local network meeting that met on Monday, and everyone seems to be approaching that in the same way through those opportunities, so that if, as expected, councils are no longer from next year, then we should be working with our councils. And I think every organisation that I met on Monday, they're having in the autumn a session with the council to hear and understand and work through what the new future will look like, and to agree what other opportunities for those that are interested, of course, from current and perhaps future governors, what other opportunities might be available to them to stay connected to the organisation, albeit in a slightly different way. So yeah, but let's come back to it again, I say twice in September, and then in the autumn through the joint board and COG to work out exactly how we take this forward.
Thanks, Peter. And just so from Colin's perspective and our discussions yesterday, I think he's very keen to engage to discuss what the potential future could look like. I also highlighted that we are losing Healthwatch across our communities and our counties as well, who currently have a high level of input into our patient engagement groups as well. We get feedback from our Healthwatch chairs as well. And also I discussed with Colin our appointed governors, whether that's our local authority, our other blue light services, or our education authorities for our students as well, and how much value has been added. So he is very clear that he'd like to look at what the future could look like, even if the bill does go through, he feels there is potentially a way around that across SCAS and CCAN, so that we would broaden our community reach and outlook. But he's going to discuss that further with you, as Peter says, at the September Council of Governors. Any questions? Peter, I can see you've got your hand up. Peter Shield, we're on the third, Peter.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. My question really was more around actually the process, because at the moment governors actually appoint and sign off the appointment of NEDs and the likes. And if that's going to move to the Secretary of State, the Secretary of State is going to just spend day and night signing off NED appointments throughout the NHS all the time. So it'd be quite interesting to see how that appointment process will work as we move forward as well.
Yeah, indeed.
That was my only observation. So from a process point of view, because governors at the moment are very close to us, aren't they? Whereas the Secretary of State will never ever see me. Expect. So it'll be quite interesting to see how that model works. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. And that's still not outlined in the bill. It's just a few words saying that, isn't it, at the moment, Peter? Peter. Yeah. Harvey.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, just a few practical questions which probably need thinking about is we will probably need to say something to the public because we issue a periodic newsletter, and I'm sure that Richard has already got that in mind, but it would be useful that the board has something perhaps to add as a comment or something like that. And in the meantime, do we actually actively seek to recruit members, as we've done in previous years? We go to large events. I've been to several recently, but I'm not actively trying to recruit people as members because they might cease to be members in less than a year. And the other thing, and I'm sure Richard knows the answer, is are there any of us who come to the end of their terms in sort of February? If so, are we just going to extend them to whenever the cliff edge is, or are we going to recruit somebody for 3 or 4 months? I'm assuming, of course, that the bill actually goes through and that Andy Burnham doesn't sort of do something totally different, but who knows?
So, Liz, can I just quickly come in on those two things? So, my understanding is that governor's term comes to an end in March. So, in terms of timing, if the bill comes through by the end of March, that will work.
My understanding is that it's the 1st of March, and we take office on the 1st of March.
Yeah,
So,
it's a good point. I'll double check. I was told when I asked that question, I was told March, but it might indeed be the 1st of March. I just assumed it was the end. Completely wrong assumption by the sounds of it. And then we can't extend. The rules don't allow any governor to be extended. They have to be re-elected. And as we get more information over coming weeks and months, as you might imagine, it would probably not be sensible to do elections at the end of the year. Because they'll be starting on the 1st of March for 4 weeks at most by the sounds of it. But we just need to wait for more information to come through before we make any final decisions on that, Harvey.
and what about members? I mean, I'm quite happy, and I would suggest that we just don't actively recruit members at the moment.
Yeah, so
we can't tell them anything.
No, that's right. So let's take that rather than make a decision here and now. Let's take a good point. Haven't actually specifically thought about that, but it probably sounds a sensible approach to kind of wind that down. But let's take that away. We can have a discussion offline about how we approach that.
Thanks, Harvey. Thanks, Peter. Richard.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is just another example of a really sort of difficult piece of legislation being passed through, where it just completely rocks the boat. It leaves the organisation in a place where they're just like, okay, what do we do? you know, whilst this is being consulted on, you know, there's just little to no information on what to actually do. We just know that this may or may not be coming in the near future. I'd like to just pick an important sentence out of this report. It says NHS Foundation Trust will have the option to retain aspects of their engagement model where it is working well. I think, you know, I'd like to speak on behalf of council and say that I feel like, you know, as critical friends, we've actually, you know, really done some good work together, you know, with the organisation, you know, both past and future work. You know, I like to think that, you know, this model works quite well. We're able to challenge, you know, the direction that the organisation is heading. We're able to get assurances for the public and for the constituents, and that is our role. You know, to gain those assurances for our constituents, to make sure that the organisation is heading in the direction that the public, you know, the taxpayer want it to head into. So where does the board and the organisation sit if they decide actually this whole model, we don't want it to change? Is there a facility there for that to happen, or is it just a case of we have to change, we have to do something different? What if CCAM and or SCAS don't want to change? What if it is working well for them? Is that something that's in the discussions as well?
Peter, do you want to go ahead and then I'll come in?
I was just so the simple answer to that, Richard, is that these are all the things that we need to consider in terms of what the future looks like. You know, there is, of course, as there is for governors exist in the foundation trust model. For non-foundation trusts, there isn't a requirement for COGS, but some non-foundation trusts do have had in the past council of governors in kind of shadow form. My experience of talking to colleagues with such non-statutory councils is that they don't work particularly well. Most that have had them have, you know, ceased. And I did raise this actually at the network meeting I mentioned on Monday about whether there's appetite from any other colleagues for a non-statutory council, and no one expressed such appetite. I mean, I probably agree with that it probably wouldn't work in the way that it works now, where you have a statutory footing to have a council arranged in a similar way that doesn't have that statutory duty behind them. But we need to, these are the things that we need to work through over the coming weeks.
Thanks, Peter. Can I just add one additional piece of feedback? Sure. Where, you know, it's obviously being mentioned that, you know, we mention these things to our MPs, we lobby the MPs. Unfortunately, you know, I'm finding that there's not a lot of movement there with the MPs. They're not replying. My local MP certainly doesn't reply to such things. It may well be more fruitful for the trust to, you know, contact Department of Health with the Secretary of State and sort of, you know, raise the issues with them directly. That you might get, you know, if you feel that, you know, certain things need to be mentioned, you know, from a CCAM point of view, it might be worthwhile that coming from the trust. You might get more of an answer than, you know, governors mentioning it to their local MPs, because it is just not on the radar for a lot of MPs.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
I think we get the same level of ambiguity that you get from the Department of Health as well. But thank you for that feedback. And just from Colin's perspective, he is very keen to listen to your views and opinions to see what a future model could look like, would look like. But until we get more clarity through the bill passing through, it's a really challenging debate at the moment. And there's also a cost element. Let's be honest, there is a cost to running a council of governors as well. So I think it's balancing that versus the benefit. I think we at CCAM really recognise the value that our council of governors give to our organisation, and particularly when we're covering such huge geographical areas. There aren't many other trusts apart from ambulance trusts that cover such huge geography. So the input from our governors being out there within our communities is pivotal to the service that we deliver the level of service and the quality of service that we deliver. So I'm certain there'll be many more conversations and debate around this area. Kirsty, did you want to come in?
So thanks, Chair. So my only point is, this is still just a suggestion at the moment. Yes, the bill is going through and, you know, there is a lead in. So should we not be applying the status quo at this moment and continue as we are operating? Because we are still a council until this changes. And I think I think it's about being open with our members and the public that we are representing, or our staff, and saying that actually, yes, still come and be a member. You've got an opportunity to influence, because we are only in month 3 of the year and we've got another 9 months to go. There is opportunity to change. I think losing that opportunity or not taking that opportunity to engage new people that want to come and be part of our trust as members, I think it's a sad reflection if that's what we're going to do. That I think we should apply the status quo and continue, but be open with them and say that actually come the 1st of March or 1st of April next year, we may or may not exist in any current form. I just think it's a sad reflection if we're thinking now we've got 9 months left before that decision is made, or when it becomes assent, even in November. I think we just need to think of the messaging. This is a council of governors in public, and I think if we've got members of the public that are going to watch this later, they're going to think, well, what's the point of joining? But actually, there is a point. We are on a really good trajectory of doing some change for our patients. And actually, we need to probably keep up that momentum.
Thanks, Kirsty. And Peter, no decisions have been made to stop anything.
No. So just to be absolutely clear, the status quo does remain, as Michael, the chair, reinforced at the council meeting in February. So it was just what I was saying in response to, I think it was Harvey's question about members, is to take offline, is to work out how we do that in the expectation that there won't be a membership from April next year. That was all. Wasn't saying that we should stop, engaging our members. Absolutely not. We are continuing to act in the way that we have been ever since we've been at FT.
And Peter, we're already planning for an annual members meeting in September.
For an annual members meeting, yep, absolutely, yep.
So, thanks. Harvey, did you want to come back in, and then we're going to move on?
Yeah, I was only to say that when we go to external events, in the past, I and colleagues have actively canvassed people. We've gone up to people who are doing CPR or looking at an ambulance and saying things like, have you thought about being a member? Now the question is, do we actually do that? Or do we hold off doing that? I mean, clearly, if somebody actually writes into the trust and says, I want to be a member, or they come up and say, how can I be a member? Then that's different. They're making the approach. But should we be actively engaging? And personally, I think, no, we shouldn't.
Yep.
I think it's business as usual for now. We just carry on until we have any clarity, which we don't have. As Kirsty says, it might not even go through with demands of other bills that need to go through. It may be timed out, but I think, Peter, if you agree, we carry on business as usual.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. Peter S., back to you. Governor and Membership Development Report.
Thanks. Just on that item, just to sort of pull it together. So noting the very positive response, thank you, from the Trust on that. And we'll have another substantive discussion at the next COG, and can I say, therefore, let's make it a substantive item, please, rather than just sort of picking it up through the minutes. Listening to that discussion, I'm actually reflecting, let's see this as an opportunity. It's an opportunity for CCAM to devise what fits CCAM in terms of patient, staff and local communities. So if that's the way it's going to be, then let's use that as an opportunity to get it exactly right for CCAM, which is very different from getting it right, say, for a hospital trust, for example. Right. On the other
Thanks,
items,
Peter. We agree with you.
Okay.
Other items.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Government and Membership Development Committee report, kindly pulled together by Richard each time, is really for information. Governor colleagues are all members of that committee and can attend or get the minutes. So unless there's any questions on that or on the Governor Activities and Queries report, I'm going to suggest we move on. And similarly on the Nominations Committee report, they're just there for information. So Liz, I'm thinking nobody wants to raise anything on that.
Thank you very much. That was easy, wasn't it? That was great. Thank you. On to administration. Any other business, anybody? Peter.
Yeah, sorry. I was sort of toying with a question about the trust charity, but given that Paul isn't here, I think what I'll do, I'll just put it in as a written question, if I may.
Okay, and we can pick that up. Andrew?
Yes, Liz, thank you. I'm sorry for those that weren't made aware that I've got a rather nastily infected leg, which is causing me some difficulty. Hence the reason that Peter Shaw stood in to this role, and of course he's done it in much a more successful way than me. So Peter, thank you so much for doing that at such short notice. The point I wanted to actually make as any other business, Liz, was just a general point to governors that I have a booked session with the new chair, Colin Danis, shortly, and I've got quite a list of things already that I think I should be raising on behalf of governors. But if any governors have any points that they would like me to raise with Colin, then please would you drop me an email or send me a text or do whatever you like, send a carrier pigeon, and I will add that to the list of things. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Connor.
Thank you. Just reading through the supplementary papers, just a thought that crossed my mind, particularly when I was reading the Pathways of Care programme mandate. Could we, if we're not already doing so, could we just think about where it's appropriate to do so, to consider including volunteers into some of the working groups? The Falls and Frailty programme is a ready example of that, where I think the voice of some of our community first responders, for example, would be very appropriate in those working groups, so that when we deliver those outcomes, we've taken into account the views and input of that important stakeholder group.
That's great, Connor. Yes, I'll take that back to Richard as well. I think it's also interesting because our volunteers and CFRs across CCAM are a really strong group. Across SCAS, they don't have nearly as many as we do covering the patch. So I think there's also some learnings from how we've developed our teams that we could share as best practice as well. And using the pathways would be an ideal way of doing that. So thank you for that suggestion, Connor.
I think volunteers would, many volunteers would welcome the opportunity to be able to contribute to those groups. And there's just kind of a related point as I have the microphone, if I may, just back to the people agenda a little earlier on. Again, in the context of volunteers, we've over 400 volunteers across the trust who come from different walks of life. And as we start to think about things like mentoring, for example, whether that's formal or informal mentoring, there are plenty of opportunities. There are plenty of volunteers who are more than willing to get involved in mentoring programs, particularly for those in first line leadership, but other leadership levels as well, to support them in their role.
Thanks, Connor. Great suggestion. And I'm sure Harbhajan is writing it down. I can see he is writing it down as we speak. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other business? Peter, do we have any questions from the public apart from the one we've already answered?
No, we don't. No, just that one.
Brilliant, thank you. And just review of meeting effectiveness. How has it worked on Teams and online? Thank you all for hanging on in there.
Very well, I think.
Peter, sure.
Yeah, excellent. Actually, this I think we're really well. I'll speak for myself, but I guess others probably think the same. Really grateful that this was rearranged so that we didn't have to make dreadful journeys and get stuck on the M25 or whatever. So worked really well, and thank you for your brilliant sharing.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was a pleasure. Kirsty.
Two things from me, Chair. One is absolutely excellent chairing. It's 25 minutes ahead of agenda, so you win the prize for that one. And second, I think what this meeting has done actually, conversations are better in person, and I think we all agree that is, you get that natural engagement instead of waiting for your hand up and things like that, and I do think that does work. However, what this meeting has done, I think the conversations here today have been very good. I think we have been able to have those honest conversations to say what we need, both from our executive, both from Jen as our chief exec, from our NEDs and from all our governors, both public and staff and appointed. I think it's been a really good meeting, and actually it's probably been one that's been quite informative for many more reasons than just the agenda. So that's, for me, it's a thank you.
Oh, thanks, Kirsty. And anyone else, any ideas, suggestions, recommendations, send them through to Richard and Peter or myself, and we can take that forward with Colin as he chairs the next Council of Governors in September. Thank you for hanging on in there. Thank you for your level of challenge. Thank you for making us wriggle at times. I really enjoyed that. And thank you to my NED colleagues for being here with me and accepting the challenge and the response. Please stay cool. It's supposed to break tonight. Look after yourselves. Take care. And the next meeting is the 10th of September. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Liz. Bye, everyone.
Bye.